Republicans still hold the majority in the U.S. Senate, but Democrats will have control of the House when next year's Congress begins in January. More than 24 seats in the House changed from red to blue in last night's midterm elections. Democrats flipped seats in suburban districts outside of Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Chicago, and Denver. And Anthony Chergosky joins us on set again to talk about what midterm results mean for the future of Washington politics. And Anthony is a UWL political science professor. And we talked a lot about Wisconsin and the Tony Evers win when you were here just a few minutes ago. Really interesting things happened across the nation last night.
Absolutely, Jen. The Democrats taking the majority in the House is a big deal. It gives them the power to investigate. And the Democrats, as it has been leaked out, as it has been kind of stated before the campaign, have a whole menu of investigations that they would like to conduct of the Trump administration. So under divided government, with the Democrats holding the House, the Republicans holding the presidency and the Senate, expect a lot of policy gridlock, but expect a lot of investigations from the House of Representatives.
You said something very interesting to me in the commercial break, and that is not only were there a lot of wins for Democrats in the Congress last night, but the candidates themselves and the look of the candidates and the particular kind of candidates that were put up against Republicans says a lot.
It does, Jen. There was a record-setting number of female candidates in this election cycle. Many have interpreted that as a response to the Trump administration. The candidate pool this election cycle did not look like the candidate pool of any previous election cycle.
And that's important. I was just reading this morning, 31 new women elected yesterday. First Native American women were elected. Sharice Davids of Kansas is a member of the Ho-Chunk Nation, which a lot of people around here are familiar with. Muslim women. There was an openly gay governor elected in Colorado. This is a very interesting theme happening across the country, and I think one of the big stories that will come out of that. But the big blue wave that we heard about coming in didn't necessarily happen all across the country.
It didn't, Jen. The big blue wave didn't really materialize in the Senate. Now, to be fair, the Democrats faced an uphill battle in the Senate. Each two-year election cycle, only a third of U.S. Senate seats are up for election. And the third of the Senate seats that were up for election in this particular election cycle really favored the Republican Party. So in the Senate, the Republicans had a very favorable map. Not so favorable in the House, and that explains why we have a split decision.
Going forward now, leading into 2020, we always want to turn the page and talk about the next election. How is a Democratic Congress, do you feel, going to change the landscape?
Well, the Democrats face a difficult choice. Do they cooperate with Donald Trump? Do they try to strike some compromises and deals with President Trump? A lot of people are suspecting that President Trump might be interested in dealing with the Democratic House because he might be perceived as kind of a transactional politician. So in one sense, the Democrats might want to cooperate with the president. But going into 2020, do you want to give him policy victories going into his re-election battle? That's a real dilemma for the Democratic Party. Do we obstruct? Do we stonewall? Or do we deal on policy? There's going to be a divide in the party when it comes to that question.
We'll have to see what happens there. We already talked about this, but in case you missed it earlier, Anthony mentioned something very, very interesting about the Evers-Walker matchup and what's happening on Twitter today.
That's right, Jen. When you look at Twitter in the United States, the #1 trending topic is Scott Walker. The #3 trending topic is Tony Evers. People all over the country are talking about this race, and that highlights what an important figure, what an influential figure Scott Walker had become nationally. How not only through his presidential campaign, but through some of the controversies in Wisconsin, he had become a widely known figure, a really high-profile Republican. And so it's no surprise that people are talking about such a high-profile figure going down to defeat in the 2018 election.
Interesting. Very interesting stuff. I could talk to you all day about this, but we've got some other things to get to. So Anthony Chergosky, thank you so much for coming in today. We hope you'll come back.
Oh, thank you so much, Jen.